Good morning, everyone. The time is 9:04 a.m. on Thursday, October 19th, 2023. I, Dr. Tanika East, Chairman of the State Advisory Panel for Exceptional Children, call this meeting to order. Good morning in person and online. Welcome to our quarterly meeting. I just want to restate the purpose of our meeting today. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, requires that states establish advisory panels to advise and assist the Kentucky Department of Education on special education and related services for children with disabilities. The SAPEC members represent various agencies, individuals with disabilities, parents of children with disabilities, service providers, and administrators. At this time, I turn it over to Ms. Misty Green, who will review the meeting norms.
Okay, interpreters are provided on site at each SAPEC meeting. Members must speak when called on for roll call or any voting. Remember to stay focused on the topic agenda at hand for the sake of time, be that in regular business or committee meetings. Additional feedback from members is provided through the meeting exit slip. The secretary is taking notes for the meeting. Meeting materials are located in your folder, sent in advance through email, and posted in the SAPEC meeting Google folder. Travel vouchers are emailed to Angela Gould and processed by OSIL.
Thank you so much. At this time, we will take roll. That's if my secretary is ready.
Yes, go ahead.
Allison Ashaw. Ashley Barlow. Dr. Jenny Ward, even though you're up there as Bolander, I did not say that this time.
I appreciate you, Dr. East.
David Bradley.
Here.
Tracy Brewer. Lashina Carruthers. Tiffany Clark. Jeffrey Coles.
Dr. East, I just got an email from Jeffrey Coles that he would be here in about 5 minutes. Okay.
Amy Beth Crump. Tal Curry.
Here.
Me, present. Dr. Zach Stumbo. Emily Fox. Tammy Giles. Jason Jones. Brittany Kleiner. April Miller. Michelle Morgan, Chadwick Knoll, Krista Payne, Tyler Reed, Cassie Jo Robinson, Danny Slayton, ex officio Greta Hilton,
Present.
are there any members virtually that I missed?
This is Cora McNabb. I didn't hear you call my name, but I also didn't get a reappointment letter.
Good morning, Miss Flora. You know it. Charge it to my head and not my heart. I will get with Misty about the reappointments, but I will put you down on our list.
So I guess officially I can't vote or be a voting member or anything, correct?
We'll yield because we don't have a quorum at this time, so that may give us a few moments to check for membership. Was your appointment up this term?
Yeah, it was up in July.
Okay. At this time, members, I need a motion to adjourn because we do not have a quorum.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we adjourn this meeting. Are there any questions? At this time, noted at 9:12, we adjourn the meeting until we establish a quorum. The time is now 9:20. I call the State Advisory Panel for Exceptional Children back to order. Who's that just joined us?
That's Ashley.
Thank you guys for joining us. I'm gonna do a summation of the present members for roll call. Just to confirm, I have Ashley Barlow present virtually. Dr. Jenny Ward, present on site. David Bradley, present on site. Tracy Brewer, present virtually. Jeffrey Coles, present on site. Tal Curry, present on site. Dr. Tanika East, present on site. Danny Slayton, present on site. Ex officio Greta Hilton, present on site. Are there any changes or corrections? We now have an established quorum. We will proceed. Next, we'll invite Melody Cooper to provide us a membership update. We know that there have been some appointments and or reappointments with the governor's office. So at this time, we ask you to bring any updates that you have available.
So, I think really we just discussed the updates that I had. So back in August, the members were reappointed who wished to be, and through executive order. So that was Ashley Barlow, Mary Laven, Danny Clayton, Allison Hanshaw, Jeffrey Coles, and Lachina Carruthers. So those were the members when we polled everyone who were interested in reappointments, and so they were reappointed through the governor's office. Now, as far as filling the other vacancies that are still there, and if I'm correct, I believe there are 8. That's the last that I have, that there are 8 vacancies that need to be filled. And I do not have further information from the governor's office on that at this time. But after the conversation that we had a little earlier, I'll reach back out again and question them again, not only about the vacancies that we still have that we made them aware of over the summer, but how to get the process rolling on our end in Oakville, see if there's something that we can do to help open up that process and make people aware.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you, Melody. At this time, I would ask of everyone to review the minutes. There were noted corrections from the April meeting. Those were sent via email as well. I'll allot 3 minutes to review and then ask for a motion. Thank you for the review of April 27th and 28th minutes. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Make that motion.
Motion made, second. Coles? Are there any discussions? Ready for the question? All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstention? It's been moved and properly seconded that the minutes be approved with the noted corrections for the April 22nd, 27th, and 28th meeting. Now I ask if you would review the minutes from the July 13th meeting for 3 minutes. Then I'll ask for a motion and a second. Thank you for your review. Can I please have a motion to approve the July 13, 2023 minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Brewer, second. Curry. Is there any discussion or corrections? Hearing none, are you ready for the question? All those approve, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstention? The ayes have it. The July 13, 2023 minutes have been approved. Next, we will have the election of officers for our July meeting. Our former chair, Dr. Lovell, resigned, and I stepped into this role as chair. So now we have a vacancy for vice chair. Would anyone like to join Danny and I on this lovely and esteemed panel as we go into school year in support of the state advisory panel along with OCO and KDE. I'll take nominations at this time. I'll take virtual nominations at this time. With no coercion. Tracy, I see a smile.
How do you feel about your attendance over East? I think that's the real question if you're looking for a vice chair.
I am just a happy person. That's it. That's all. Nothing else going on there.
I think we're getting back on track. I think we all have busy lives.
I was being silly. Yeah, vice chair would just take over for you. Right?
Yeah.
So if you're here, then that's pretty.
It's okay.
Did you want to share any other responsibilities of the vice chair?
Well, I think as former vice chair, it was standing, of course, in the role of the absent chair. But then we have additional meetings just to make sure in the minutes, because those have to be approved. We actually have a new liaison that will lead us going forward and just try to continue to stay abreast. Now as chair, I'm responsible for sending out the newsletters that I received from Dr. Sharp and Associate Commissioner Hilton. It's work. I think we prioritize different or compartmentalize differently, but it's work and it's doable. Do I have any nominations from the floor? Hearing none, we'll close the nominations at this time. But noting the agenda minutes, that we'll reopen it back up when we meet in November. At this time for public comment, we do open that up on our social media sites. We send that information out to our respective constituents across the Commonwealth. That time is available for anyone to speak. We are not a voting party on that. Our job and due diligence is just to listen. We have not received any public comment from any of our social media sites or our email outlets. Do we have anyone presently in the room for public comment at this time? Do we have anyone online for public comment at this time? Hearing none, we will modify that time. It's normally open for about 15 minutes, but we will continue to move forward with our agenda. With no public comment at this time, we will allow for about a 5-minute break and we'll resume at 9:45. We will ask that Dr. Thomas Williams be prepared to present at 9:45. Break. Back from break, the time now is 9:46. We will now have our preschool update from Dr. Thomas Williams.
Yes, so good morning, everyone. Happy to be in community with you. I'm happy to share all the great things that's going on in the preschool world. Okay, so I have 3 updates for today. So the first update is to kind of talk around the preschool development. So I don't know if you remember, but back in December, Kentucky was awarded almost $32 million to support and to leverage early childhood practices throughout the state. The Governor's Office of Early Childhood is our fiscal agent, and so with the Governor's Office of Early Childhood, we're working very closely to satisfy within KDE 2 activities. The first activity is quality. It's to make sure that we are continuing to provide high quality instruction for our preschool students and for our programs. The second activity is sub-grants, or the preschool sub-grants. So with these sub-grants are very limited as to what I can say because this is a great competitive application. But what I can share is that with these sub-grants, it will satisfy in partnership to support full-day year-round preschool. And so that should be forthcoming. Our finance office leads that initiative in regards to the sub-grants. I also want to announce that we have hired a preschool quality coordinator, that is Jennifer Hagan. She will be leading quality throughout the state and supporting our programs as we look again to sustain, increase, leverage our high quality programs throughout the state. The second thing that I want to announce to the council is our Pyramid State Leadership Team. So at a very high level, the Pyramid, we've been working very closely with Pyramid Consortium and the Pyramid Framework. So the Pyramid, it is a social and emotional competence to support infants and young children. And so we are now a state pyramid in Kentucky. We are the 41st state to move forward with the state leadership team. And so what does that mean? That means that this team comes together, share practices to support our regional training centers and our districts in regards to elevating pyramid throughout the state. So we're very excited that we're able to partner with the Pyramid Consortium. We're very excited that we are the 41st state to implement the pyramid model. And again, this framework is to support infant and young children's social and emotional competence. The last update is around the Early Learning Bus Grant opportunity. So this was made available through our ARP funds, and so we're very happy to announce that OCIL has announced this grant opportunity. So districts may receive up to $100,000 to implement the Learning Bus. And so what is Learning Bus in regards to preschool? It's exactly what it is. We're taking the classroom and putting it into a bus, on the bus. And I had an opportunity to view a Learning Bus with one of our districts, and it's absolutely amazing. Where you take a classroom, a high quality classroom, and you put it onto a bus, and you make the bus and you're taking this learning bus throughout the community to expose children and also to enhance their play throughout that experience. So we're very happy to announce that grant opportunity. And when you think about preschool and early childhood, environment is the third teacher. And so we're very excited that we can take this initiative into the communities to make sure that our preschool students are receiving a high quality education. And so those are the updates that I have for preschool.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Are there any questions virtually? Are there any questions in person? I do have a couple of questions.
Okay.
For your pyramid team,
Yes.
how many members does that consist of?
Yeah, so currently we have several agencies as partners. So we have a representative from IHE on this team. We have someone from First Steps. We have child care, the Government's Office of Early Childhood, just different agencies and representatives to make sure that we're bringing all the voices together to make sure that we are not missing the mark and making sure that all voices are heard and we're representing Kentucky.
And And then, when do you expect the learning buses to roll out?
So that's a good question. So the grant opportunity has just announced. So hopefully, once, and again, that's led through another office. And so if there are any questions around that grant opportunity, I will give you that email address, and you can email all questions to that inbox. And that email address is kderfp@education.ky.gov. And they can answer any questions in regards to the Learning Bus Initiative.
What's the name of that office?
The Office of Finance and Operations. So, thank you.
Any more questions? Thank you so much for that preschool update. Next, we will have our guidance update. Hello, Ms. Veronica, I see you sitting back there. From Ms. Veronica Sullivan.
Good morning. So I just wanted to take some time to update you all on the guidance that we have created and the resources that we've made available for both our local school districts and our families. On an annual basis, we update our IEP guidance document. That's a document that's used quite frequently by our LEAs to our districts to help them in development of student with disabilities IEPs, and also stay within compliance for that as well. We solicit feedback from the districts using a Director of Special Education one-stop. And we will collect information from our districts around current guidance we have available, as well as any needs that they may have where we don't have guidance available. So we'll collect those updates, and then we'll make changes to our existing guidance based on feedback from the field, if there are any changes that have to be made. That document was released in June. We also have released the autism guidance update, and thank you, Cal, for supporting us with that and giving us feedback on that as well. That has gone out in June and is being used across the state. We also created a question and answers document related to students with disabilities in adult correctional facilities. That's available. There's some work going on around supporting those students in those facilities, and so we've created guidance for that as well. In July, if you recall, I believe it was in November, we came to you with a proposed change to our definition of hearing impairment and visual impairment and solicit feedback on that from the panel. After we received that feedback, we created guidance and resources for our districts and for our families to give them a better understanding of those changes to that definition. We also brought in a group that involved parents to help us with that, to ensure that that document was not only clear to educators, but also to our parents and families as well. That was released in July. We created a questions and answers document related to developmental delay. We have been collecting questions that we get frequently at the state level around developmental delay, and we worked with our early learning unit and preschool staff to develop that guidance document. And then finally in August, we released our parent guide for the alternate Kentucky summative assessment. And that was an update that was done to that document as well. Okay, so to give you some upcoming guidance resources that we have available, just this week, we are announcing the release of a guide for Child Find that is geared towards our districts. It's a resource for new educators as well as new directors of special education around a foundational understanding of the Child Find responsibilities. We will be there was a discipline package that was released from U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Education Rehabilitative Services, excuse me, and the Office of Civil Rights. That package was released nationally, I believe in July. And what we have done is created just a video. It's a large package, and it takes a lot of time to go through the entire package. And so what we are trying to develop is a quick reference tool for educators and our families and communities to access that information. It's not going to give them everything they need. They're going to need to look at those materials, but it will give them a starting point where they can begin to target information that they want to look more deeply at in the future. So that will be available soon. In November, we will be releasing a dispute resolution comparison chart. There was a national resource that was available through an OSEP-funded technical assistance center called Cadre. And it was a really good resource that lays out for the reader to understand the difference between a state formal complaint, mediation, and due process. So the problem with utilizing that tool as it was written is it didn't apply to Kentucky because it had elements that were not the same for Kentucky. So we took that, and based on that resource, we just Kentuckyized it, is what we like to call it. We just made it applicable to Kentucky. And so we will be releasing that soon in November. We also had heard from the field, and our data showed that there was a need to clarify the eligibility and evaluation process for our families as well as our educators. So we have created and it's still a draft, so it's not released yet, but we've created just a very short guide that will take the reader through the entire process of referring for evaluation, what the steps are, and then how eligibility is determined. And so we hope that's a quick reference guide for both our educators and our families to understand that process more. So are there any questions about the resources that we have coming or past resources that we've released?
I actually have two.
Okay.
Okay, so the first one is, are you all seeing a need for clarification around the new language in KAR 158, 150 with expulsions and suspensions?
So with application to students with disabilities, within that, it discusses that the IDEA must be followed. So we are currently working on behavior guidance is what we're calling it now. It's in the development phase. But what we're trying to do is help educate the public around what those IDEA requirements are. And then also helping to give alternatives to suspension and removal.
Yeah, and I mean, the reg allows the alternatives. I mean, I think that was one of the most specific changes was that they said you can go in alternate placement. But what I'm seeing, I'm an attorney up in Northern Kentucky, and what I'm seeing in a lot of my cases is that students are, universally lacking coping skills. And so their coping skill is things that they've seen in mass media. They just make something that a threat assessment says is not a threat. But they say something that is scary. And then schools feel like they have no choice but to expel them without even doing an MDR. And then we have elementary schoolers that then they say, okay, well, now we have to go to alternate placement because the superintendent can decide alternate placement under the new reg. But there is no alternate placement for a fourth grader. And I think districts feel like they have to follow this really rigidly, but then they miss the part about IDEA having to come into play, and they miss the MDR of the process, and they feel like they're kind of stuck between following special education and behavior laws and guidance and this new reg. So I'm happy that you're seeing that because I'm seeing a huge trend up here.
Thank you for that feedback. We appreciate hearing from you, any of you on the panel, around things that you're hearing or seeing taking place. It's helpful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. Thank you. I think that's what we're here for. My second question is about eligibility, and I'm happy that there's still time to catch this because if there's need for more feedback, I can get more. But relative to eligibility and evaluations, I do a lot of work in the IDD community, specifically with Down syndrome and autism. And a trend that we first started seeing in Central Kentucky, and now it's kind of spread, is this trend that evaluations, so the evaluations should, we do evaluations to determine eligibility, but then we should use evaluation data to develop the present levels of performance, and from that we should choose goals. And a lot of parents in the IDD community do not want cognitive testing. It is not proven to be a good indicator of aptitude for kids with IDDs. And fortunately, Cincinnati Children's is studying that, and we'll get good data on that in 5 or 6 years. But in the meantime, what districts are saying is fine. If you deny cognitive testing, we can't give you academic goals. Parents are saying you can do all the academic testing you want. You can run a Woodcock-Johnson, you can run a Kaufman, you can run a Wyatt. And districts are saying, nope, if you don't do cognitive testing and if we don't do an IQ score, then we won't allow you to have academic goals. We'll just do, a DD, or we'll do an OHI, and you can get behavior goals or something. And I finally got to the heart of that in one district that explained that it went back to an email, like a Department of Ed email that went out, just those updates, that the Department of Ed sends out. And it was about SLD eligibility. And it was answering a question, like a Dear Colleague question, that said, if a child qualifies for one SLD, do they have to get goals in the other academic areas? So if they have dysgraphia, do they need reading goals and do they need math goals? Or if they have dyslexia, do they need writing and math goals? And the answer to that was clearly no. So I wonder if A, this is a trend that you already know and it's addressed in that guidance, and B, if it isn't, if we can somehow get people together to inform the KDE of this trend, because it's becoming really, really problematic in the IDD community, at least.
I think this is the first I'm hearing of this trend, so I appreciate you bringing that to us. I think that's something we could discuss further and set up some time where we could talk about that.
That would be awesome. Should I just send you an email to do that?
Yeah, if you don't have my email address, Candy, and I'm not going to spell my name out for you right now. Yes. You can go through Misty. She can put us in contact.
And I would just chime in on what Ashley's saying. I am the director of the Down Syndrome Association, and I hear that a lot. If you don't get cognitive testing, you cannot have any academic goals. A lot. So I do think it's something that needs to be clarified.
Thank you.
I had a question regarding the students and adults of correctional facilities. So Melody and I, she probably knows where I was going with this, because Melody and I serve on the Kentucky Mental Health Judicial Commission and the subgroup for individuals with disabilities. So I'm assuming that those are potentially 17-year-olds in the correctional facilities.
So it would be any student who's still eligible under the IDEA who has an IEP. So it would be, and I'm probably would need Caroline to speak to exact, but she oversees the correctional work, so. Sure.
Yeah.
It would be students that are in the adult correctional facilities that, as Veronica said, are still eligible under the IDEA. So it could be students up to age 21 if they haven't yet received a high school.
So 17 or 21, presumably, or maybe 16.
I'm not sure the exact age
Okay.
of the students that would be in the adult facility, but it would be.
So where can we find this? Because it looks like that update was done in July. Because what we're trying to find is that correlation of those that do have a disability in the penal system that are still not receiving services or were misdiagnosed and, now on a mental health trend.
So you're asking where can you
Find the guidance.
the guidance? So
That's available on our website, and I can get that link to Misty, and
Yes.
she can send it out too. I can get actually the link to all of the guidance that I've shared, and then if anybody's interested in taking a look at any of it, we'll get those links to Misty, and she'll get it out to them.
Oh, that'll be perfect.
Yeah.
Great. Are there any additional questions for Veronica this morning, whether that's online or in person? Thank you again, as always, for those guidance updates.
Thank you.
And Ms. Carolyn, you just happen to be up next. How did you get so lucky? We have next our due process updates with Carolyn Morris.
Thank you. Good morning. It's good to see all of you today. We have 3 due process hearings that I want to update you on today. I believe that Misty has shared the redacted copies of each of these with you. They're also available on our website. We have a ADU dispute resolution page, and each of these are available there. If you want to look at the full copy of those, they're rather lengthy. And so what I've done today is just try to break it down and provide you with a very brief summary of the information that's included in there. So the first one I'll talk about is agency case number 1819-12. And this one had multiple issues that were decided in the case. There were actually about 10 issues. And so what I'm going to do is share with you each issue that was decided through the case and what the hearing officer decided. So the first one was whether the district failed to develop an adequate transition plan for the student. And the hearing officer found that the district did not fail to develop that adequate transition plan. Next was around some services. It was whether the district failed to provide related services of Braille, sign language, and orientation and mobility. And the district stated in the post-hearing brief that it did not provide 27 hours of the orientation and mobility services to the student. The student requested more compensatory education hours than just that 27. However, the hearing officer found the student did not show that the student was entitled to more compensatory education. So the hearing officer ordered the district to provide the 27 hours of compensatory education in orientation and mobility services to the student that they missed. The next issue was whether the student's transfer was a change of placement and whether that transfer was arbitrary. And the hearing officer found the transfer was a change of placement and it was not arbitrary. Next was whether the district properly notified the student of the ARC meeting. The hearing officer found that the district did properly notify the student. Next was whether the student's alleged violation was a manifestation of the student's disability, and if yes, whether the district conducted a manifestation hearing. The hearing officer found the student's behavioral violation was not a manifestation of the disability, and the district did conduct a manifestation hearing. Next issue was whether the student completed all the classes and tests required to qualify for graduation from the high school. And the hearing officer found that the student did complete all the classes and tests required to qualify for graduation. Whether the student actually passed the final 2 tests that were given to the student, and whether the student received the necessary accommodations on those tests. And the hearing officer found that the student did pass those final tests and the student did receive the appropriate accommodations while taking the test. And then whether the student was properly exited from special education services, and the hearing officer found the student was properly exited. And then there were 2 issues that the hearing officer stated that the undersigned does not have jurisdiction over these issues, but I did want to note them there that they were, if the student graduated from high school, whether the student was inappropriately denied an opportunity to participate in the graduation ceremony, and then whether the district intentionally discriminated against the student and gave the student disparate treatment under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. So there were several issues in that one that were decided. Ultimately, the student was awarded that 27 hours of compensatory education and orientation and mobility services. The next one is agency case number 1920-15. And this case was appealed to the Exceptional Children Appeals Board. You'll see that as ECAB for short when you look at this on the website. So this was the decision of that appeals board. This due process complaint was filed seeking relief for a student who was facing expulsion. At the time of the filing of the due process complaint, the student had not yet been identified as a student eligible for special education. The complaint sought compensatory education and an evaluation for suspected disabilities. The hearing officer ruled that the petitioner's request for stay put was denied based upon failure to establish the school had a basis of knowledge that the student was a child with a disability. There was a hearing held in October and November of 2022. And based on the expressed concerns of the parents after the student filed for due process, the district conducted an evaluation for eligibility. They looked at both the categories of emotional behavioral disability, or EBD for short, and other health impairment, or OHI. The student was found ineligible under the category of EBD, and the student was found eligible under the category of OHI. Then there was a draft IEP was reviewed by the ARC team. The student was not able to attend that meeting, but the IEP was reviewed with the parents. No goals were adopted at the time because the parents wanted the student's input first. So they kind of paused on finalizing that IEP. There were further efforts by the special education director for the ARC to reconvene, but the ARC never reconvened with the student present, and the IEP was never finalized. The petitioner in this case made it clear that the student's intent was to complete the student's education being homeschooled, and the student was not going to return to school, so therefore they never were able to have that ARC and determine the finality of the IEP. In this case, the student had to bear the burden of proof. The ECAB found that the hearing officer correctly held that the student was not denied a free appropriate public education, and since the respondent did not deny FAPE, the student was not entitled to compensatory education. Additionally, the appeals board found the hearing officer correctly found the respondent school district did not fail to identify the student as eligible for special education services, and that the hearing officer was correct in finding the respondent did not have a basis of knowledge to suspect or know the student was a child with a disability in need of special education. And then I've got one more, agency case number 2223-22. In this case, there was an ARC held in 2023 to discuss reevaluation needs for development and implementation of an IEP as the student was preparing to transition into kindergarten. And an integrated psychological evaluation was conducted, and an IEP was subsequently developed by the ARC. It was based on observations, testing information, input from the parents and district staff, evidence-based practices and strategies used with other autistic children, a communication evaluation report, and an STOT special ed service evaluation report. The IEP focused on social communication, interaction with peers, and communication using the AAC device. The IEP was drafted in an April ARC meeting. There was disagreement during that meeting about the proposed minutes in the resource setting. So the ARC met again in May and reviewed an IEP that revised and reduced the amount of time in that resource setting, like the time pulled out for specialized class instruction. There was still a disagreement between the ARC with the student leaving the general education classroom for any amount of time in the resource room. But there was agreement that the student could leave the general ed classroom to participate in speech and occupational therapy. So the petitioner filed a letter requesting a due process hearing. The hearing occurred in July, and the issues addressed in the hearing were the following. The petitioner in the complaint stated that the school district failed to design an appropriate IEP, and the proposed IEP would deny the student the right to be educated in the least restrictive environment and would deny the student a free, appropriate public education. The relief that was sought was that they wanted the district to create and implement an appropriate IEP and to allow the student to fully participate in the general education curriculum as well as extracurricular and non-academic activities. They also wanted for the district to provide supplementary aids and services of a one-to-one paraeducator who was specially trained in behavior techniques. And then also they wanted attorney's fees to be awarded to the student's attorney of record. So ultimately, the hearing officer concluded that the petitioner failed to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that the student was denied a free, appropriate public education or that there was a violation of the IDEA. So there was no relief given in that case. That's a lot that I just threw at you. I'm sorry. I know that's a lot. Do you all have any questions or feedback you'd like to share?
I have one quick question. When it goes to the ECAP, how does it get to that level? When it
So-
gets to the ECAP?
Great question. After the due process hearing is final and a report is issued by the hearing officer, there's information in that about the appeals process. And so there is a window of time when either party is able to appeal that decision, and that appeal goes to the Exceptional Children Appeals Board.
Gotcha. Are there any questions online? Are there any questions in person? Carolyn, as always, thank you for providing us with due process updates. And we look forward to November for more updates. Well, council, we are continuing to run through our agenda more expeditiously today. So it would typically be lunchtime, but I do not know if our next presenters are in the room or prepared, since they were scheduled after lunch.
Dr. East, if I may.
Sure. You.
If, I'd like to make meeting minutes for this time, since there is ample time right now for that before lunch.
I have a motion on the floor to yield now to committee meetings before lunchtime. I do not have quorum. Sorry, Bradley, I have to rescind that motion at this time. But I think he's on, I think.
There you
Look at that. You have disrupted my Robert's Rules of Order today, just so you know.
I'm sorry. Please accept my apology. I had to take that phone call.
Okay, I'll restate the motion. We have a motion on the floor from David Bradley that we now use the rest of the time leading up to lunch to have our committee meetings since we're ahead of schedule.
Second.
Second by Ward. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstention? It's been moved and properly seconded that we move our committee meetings up to now on the agenda, which will leave us about an hour and a half for committee meetings. And then we will ask that our OSIP, Marjorie Thompson, be prepared before we adjourn. We'll give us time to see how much is needed for committee meetings, since we don't have all members present. So at this time, I'd like to, let's do a short recess for 3 minutes before our committee meetings disperse. With the approved motion to move up the committee meetings, I'm going to now ask which committees will be utilizing their 10 minutes of meeting times. And for those in the room and online that were not present in July when we had to be adaptive to this particular forum, the committee meetings, whether they're virtual or in person, will have 10 minutes to meet. They will converse as if we were not in the room and a part of that committee. We are just privileged to sit in on their subcommittee meetings as they report out with the work that they've been doing the last few months, and if they have yet. Was there a representative for transitions? Parent involvement? Supervision and legislative?
That's just me, and I do not have a reporter. Need to meet with myself tonight.
Faith?
I'm Faith, and I don't have a report either.
Communication?
We briefly lost our Facebook page. I think they thought we were impersonators of the other SAPEC, which was also us. So we have that back now, and that is the update.
Do you want your 10 minutes?
No.
Stakeholder engagement?
Well, that was me, and we've been working together on both communications and stakeholder engagement. No.
Okay, and then the ad hoc.
Dr. Reese, did you find out who the members of that committee were? Because I know that was a question I asked the last meeting.
Oh, I did not.
And actually that was something that Brian was putting together. So I don't know if you would have been in the know, but
He actually had called me 3 times this week, but we keep playing phone tag. I'll put it back on my to-do list on who's on that committee. So we will have a report out from the transition committee. Sure. 10:31.
Share the last.
Give me just a second. He's wanting the meeting minutes from the last meeting.
Oh.
It's in the, he's one, I guess the. Okay, do you know which one?
It says he won't.
He's wanting the meeting minutes from the last meeting.
Right here, I can send it to her.
Where is it in here? Is it approved meeting summaries? No, that's February 23. Oh, it's in this one. All right, I got you.
Tracy or Ashley, did you have any report outs?
I'm sorry, what?
Did you have any report outs for your committee?
No.
No.
Just want it on the screen.
Thank you.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
Is it okay?
Give us just a second. I don't have access to it, so it'll take just a minute. She's going to email it to me.
once we finish the committee meeting, can I please have a motion to move up on the agenda for our 2020, our November CEC meeting dates, and then our 2024 meeting schedule to follow our committee reports? Can I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Bradley, motion.
Second.
Second, Coles. Once we finish the transition committee meeting report, we will then discuss our CEC meeting scheduled for November 19th, and then going forward, our 2024 meetings. Thank you. Any questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstention? It's been moved and properly seconded. Then we will then discuss the 2024 meetings and the Kentucky CEC meeting for November 19th and 21st. Thank you.
So what I understood of what we're supposed to do during this time is the 10 minutes is also for an opportunity not only to give an update, but to get feedback from folks. Since we're all trying to work on this, work together, not just the one or two folks, 2 to 3 folks who are on each subcommittee. So quick update. It was Dr. East, Zach Stumbo, Cora, McNabb, and myself, I believe in the July 13th meeting, if this is typed up correctly. Basically, we had been talking about creating some sort of resource for IEP meetings geared towards parents and families to help with transition. We've talked about doing that work with the Employment First Transition Subcommittee. We'd also talked in regard to looking at a particular OBR document. And OBR has been involved in part of that conversation with us. So to give you an update, OBR is working on their own updates to the document, and I think this subcommittee is willing to look at what updates they make to their most recent program document. The next piece is really, and where we didn't get any further, is kind of the second to last bullet. We talked about possibly launching an IEP resource sheet or something at the November 2023 Exceptional Child Conference. We obviously haven't met to do much work on that, but I think there's still an opportunity to work on this transition effort, if you will. And so I just wanted to see if there was still interest or if there were other areas, since we have KD folks here with as well, that would like to talk about what's going on in the schools and what might be most helpful. Because I think the real concern has been, one, OBR at age 14. We know OBR is a limited service as far as, they're building up their staff capacity. They can't be at every meeting, but the reality is a lot of times we don't know that parents are finding out that OBR is a resource in the IEP process, typically starting at age 14. And then even if they do, what is the best resource so that they know that that's what community work transition program. There may be some other things the school does that's through OBR, but ultimately at graduation, there's some really important things that OBR can help with kids with disabilities. And I think, how do we make a better connection? That was one particular effort around looking at transition, and knowing that looks different in each district. So I'll throw that out there to some of the folks that do this daily, and then also KD folks, if they have any thoughts about what would be ways to improve that messaging and making sure that OBR is getting connected to communities. Because I oftentimes get calls that OBR, they had no idea that OBR had a possibility of being involved, that they should have been around the table through the IEP process. And I get the adult conversations or parents of adults saying, we had no idea. And I'm like, well, this is a great resource for your child who's now an adult that's looking for employment, all the way from post-secondary to training to supported employment, So how do we do a better job of informing those folks?
I really love the idea of a guidance document, like something that says this is what OVR can do altogether, because I agree that parents do not know that OVR exists. And honestly, to the extent that they do, their experiences have been really incomprehensive. So they have a really hard time getting a hold of OVR. When they do get a hold of OVR, they don't get kind of a comprehensive, like, wow, transition. And it's a shame because the whole purpose of IDEA is to further employment, education, and independent living. And so, like, the purpose of IDEA is to promote adult life, but then we get to transition age and it's just a bunch of box checking. So, I think it would be awesome to have a really comprehensive guidance document that says this is what OVR can do. And I personally would love a focus on evaluations, because I think parents get to the age of, like, unfortunately it's 18 to 22, but they should be getting to the age of 14 and thinking, what are we going to do? Like, what could we be good at? Where do our interests and our strengths lie? And how do our weaknesses disaffect that? And, but then I see so many IEPs that say, well, Joey wants to work at GameStop when he is 22. But Joey has zero customer service skills. And it's such a shame. So I would love a focus on evaluations so that parents really understand how OVR can help you to look at things that are employment centric, but also independent living centric, transportation, health advocacy, social emotional health, social health. All of those areas of adult life are things that voc rehab can get involved in while employment is the focus. So a focus on evaluations and the big document. And then the third thing I'll say is, I also think it would be super helpful if there was a one-pager that we could, and one of us could ask for a pro-information bill that says this document from OVR must be presented at every transition IEP. So, like, we had the, actually, this is Ohio. I live in Greater Cincinnati. So in Ohio, we have a pro-information bill on Down syndrome diagnosis that goes back to an NIH document. So on diagnosis in Ohio, for Down syndrome, you have to get a reference to this NIH, like, fact sheet about Down syndrome. I would love for there to be a one-pager that's like, your child is transition aged in Kentucky. Here are the agencies that can help. Here are things that we talk about in transition. Here's maybe even like a link. Maybe there's a really great questionnaire that parents can fill out to do some self-exploration so they can be more involved in the IEP meetings, like to empower parents with information. That's a lot, sorry.
No, thank you for that. And I think you hit upon one of the things that we talked about as a one-pager that might be the employment checklist from UKHDI as a starting place, because that really covers a lot of those life domains that you mentioned. Not just OVR, but looking at health, wellness, transportation, those areas.
Well, and just to piggyback on that, I think, parents have never heard of OVR. And in some counties, the schools, I believe the schools are not inviting OVR because they have their own program. And so parents aren't aware that OVR is even out there or what they do. So my question is, are schools not required to invite OVR and to follow up on that invitation? Does anybody know the answer to that?
Dr. Leah.
I don't see it.
Thank you. And I may ask the directors to come and share a little bit of information if they would. Couple of things that
I think is worth discussion across the panel, is as we move forward with this, just thinking about the advice to OCO. I've written down that you're thinking about a guidance document that fully explains OBR, what rights that parents have, which ties in, sounds like a little bit with parental rights as well. And then it also sounds like we may want to go a little bit further to discuss maybe roles and responsibilities, which we can certainly get with OBR and create something like that. However, we do have some things already out there with their transition guidance and support, and we do check within our monitoring processes around other agencies. So Veronica, Carolina, if you want to come to the library and just a little bit.
Yeah, so we actually developed guidance on transition practices to assist our districts in developing programs that support the transition, post-secondary transition of students with disabilities. We call those practice profiles. It operationalizes the practices that the district's program should be taking to have an effective transition program. That was released, I think, about a year ago. It's getting close to a year ago. That may be something that we can share with the panel, as well as communicating that out again to our districts to ensure that they are aware of that document for those that are new. So that's one.
What's the name of that, Veronica?
It is I always call it the transition practice profile, but that's not the name. I have to look up the exact name. But I can get that for you, Jeff.
Yes, and then as Greta mentioned, from the monitoring perspective, we have annually, we submit a state performance plan annual performance report to Office of Special Education Programs. We share that with you each year about the data and information that we submit. And under that, we have an indicator 13 that looks specifically at transition. And we do monitoring around that indicator specifically. And we look at the transition services and supports that are being provided to students. We look to see if OBR is invited to the meeting to ensure that there's parent consent before that invitation is sent. We look to see if OBR is going to be responsible for providing any of those transition services, that they are invited to the meeting. If they don't attend, that they are provide input into what's discussed at that.
There seemed to have been in times past an ILP or an individual learning plan that included. That no longer exists, or does it?
There's still a process for the ILP. It's a little bit different than it's been in the past, the specific requirements around that, but we still have in our Kentucky administrative regulations for special populations, we can look at that ILP.
I think I'm trying to ask Ashley, is that evaluation that she is referring to that should exist comparable to the ILP process, Ashley?
Well, it's interesting. Yes and no. But I mean, even though truth be told, I don't have, like the volume of my cases are not usually transition aged. It's usually a lot of, I don't know. I've never tracked grade level, but most of my clients are not older than 10th grade, unless it's discipline. Yes and no. Even though I work in this field day in and day out as an attorney and I have a degree in education, even I struggle to know where we can get standardized good data or even questionnaire data to help families navigate transition. So yes, those things that would go into an ILP can be super helpful, but I have literally had parents just Google stuff and say, oh, I found this thing about employment online and this would be helpful. Or, one time I had a parent that was a guidance counselor and she had more information than the Voc Rehab folks did. It was not in the state of Kentucky. But it just seems like there isn't a universal bevy of stuff. And I use the PAR Toolkit a lot, which is an app that has like a list of evaluations. And even there aren't a whole lot that are transition centric. I think they're good. I agree with you about HDI's employment checklist, that it's a good resource. I think there are other good resources that evaluate baseline skills and baseline performance. So the National Down Syndrome Congress has one that's more like about humanity, even what medications you're taking and that sort of thing. Actually, the Down Syndrome Association of Greater Cincinnati has the best one. Theirs is called their Adult Toolkit. The one that I think is the most comprehensive. And I have parents walk through that just to jar their memory, but by way of like, where are we functioning? What's next? And what are we going to be good at? I don't see a whole lot of resources. Maybe partnering with a co-op would be helpful, because there are transition specialists at co-ops. Like when I go to the CEC conference, I'm always blown away by how much information there is about transition, but it just doesn't seem widely known.
That's good feedback. So as you think about that, what can we do to work through, and I'm going to say the surtax, because the special education technical assistance centers, which are the special education co-ops, or what they used to be, so I just refer to them as co-ops to kind of separate them, or surtax to separate them from the larger co-ops. We fund those with our IDEA discretionary funds, and so we work very closely with them, particularly through Veronica's division. So if they're doing a great job, that's great feedback. And we're open to any ideas that the panel can provide to us. We can leverage what's already working out there and broaden it, expand it, do better. So I just would say that I appreciate that. And that gives us some ideas on where we can start.
Yeah, well,
I'm sorry. I wonder if, we've got these great guidance documents out there that you all have been working on, and they are so helpful. But, and you send them, if you're asking the districts to get them out, that's great. But is there a way, and maybe let me just start here. Is there a way, like, I know there's a database, we know who has IEPs or 504s. Is there a way to just send links to parents? Parents don't go out to KDE. They don't look at the website. They don't have time. They don't even know a guidance document exists. So how to get that in front of parents? And I've been really impressed with Medicaid over the last few years, where it used to be you had to go to their website and sift through and find and know the jargon and blah, blah, blah. And now Medicaid is really, I have to say, in Kentucky, doing a good job of reaching directly to their clients. I guess clients is the right word. And so I just wonder if there's a way to just get these directly in the hands of parents, whether that's just a listserv that, you can give direct links and explain to them, this is a guidance document, this is why it's important, just click on this link. Because I just don't think parents even know that they're out there.
This is all really good feedback, and thank you, because that's just help us as we move forward. Plus, I know that there's lots of other partners and people looking at this, and I just don't want to be doing something extra that is already being done. I think it's just a matter of how do we kind of move forward with keeping this on our radar screen and also utilizing the existing tools that we have, making sure that we're parents ultimately what they need.
I just wanted to clarify that Ashley had indicated, and there's two things that I'm hearing. One is, are we attempting to identify the interest of students, or are we attempting to identify the resources available, transition resources? And those are two different asks.
The our target was, and I'm not on the committee anymore, was to get inform the parents of the transition services. Because
So those are the resources available. And that could be something as simple as just a handbook of resources, transition resources.
So my last ask would be, are there folks who would like to join if we have a meeting in between now and the next SAPEC meeting, transition meeting? Folks here that would like to be a part of that? But right now, I think it's me, myself, and
I have an interest.
Okay.
I would, if you let me know when, I would try to be part of that.
Thank you.
I'll just add one last comment and say I benefited from Voc Rehab when I was a kid. I have a physical disability, and Voc Rehab helped me transition to college. And the resources that are available now, as opposed to in 1996, are immensely better. So that was a lot of this is what we need to do, and parents don't feel empowered. But I mean, I'm telling you, my experience with Voc Rehab was we can pay for your books. And so the resources are significantly better, and Voc Rehab is doing a great job. I just really think we can capitalize and really help parents. And I think this is also a really nice sign of our inclusive times that we're trying to get students transitioned to effective and engaged adult life. So good job.
All right, thank you, Council, for that feedback for the transition committee. Thank you for council members that have agreed to step in and fill the vacancies on the committee in the interim with assistant TAL and the transition team. That wraps up our committee portion at this time. Now we will move to the Kentucky CEC conference that will take place November 19th through the 21st. Over the past few years, we've met in several different forms and capacities, whether it was Saturday morning, Sunday morning, wrapped up midday on Sunday. I'm open for discussion to what's going to work best, because there's a lot of logistics behind the scenes that we don't know that needs to take place with a conference of that magnitude. So we need to be mindful and cognizant of the people that will make that happen, and want it to be seamless for the panel, for our children with special needs, our parents with special needs, those individuals with special needs, our teachers, our administrators, everyone who will be in attendance, and hopefully we'll get some public comments during that time. So I now open the floor for meeting times for the CEC conference.
I think we talked about having a table during the exhibitor area. So I don't know how we plan to get a schedule to get that manned as well. In our last meeting, we talked about just having a table to let people there know that we're here and that they can have public comment, and maybe to do something to hand out, but we didn't get much further than that.
We did. To be honest, Tracy, we really got lost in transition. We really did with Joe's transition. Misty and I's transition. She was looking for me at my former employer for a long time. She just happened to find me a couple of days ago to know that I did exist, and nothing had happened to me, because y'all would have to ask my parents, see if something did. But she had my former email address for months in, where she was trying to contact me and coordinate some things. So We'll share the mic with you guys.
And I cannot remember right off the top of my head which meeting it was, if it was July or even back in April, but I was remembering that the group voted not to meet at the CEC conference and to do like a table or something instead. So I'm not sure if that were to take place, we would really have to do some quick coordinating those meetings. You know, I know that's in process of already getting all that done. So that maybe the group remembers differently, but that was the way I thought the group had gone. So they were not going to have a that this October meeting replaced that.
Members had expressed that they wanted time to attend the conference and not have to miss the conference, right?
I see a lot of head nods and affirmations. So is it the pleasure of the council to only be an attendee at the meeting and not have a presence or tabling of some sort? Is that possible at this point for us at least to get a table where we will talk about the purpose of the council? And I guess to that point, Angie's in the bag. If we're not having a meeting, will they still provide registration and or lodging accommodations since it won't be a meeting? I'm getting head nods from Angie, yes, and registration will still take place. Okay.
Dr. East, we can support the council, the attendance of the council for CC and the registration.
Okay. So it sounds like we will not be meeting, but I'm going to ask for someone to make a motion for the pleasure of the council for the CEC meetings, and if we need a table, because again, logistically, we need to get that coordinated. And then we'll coordinate the schedule.
Can I just clarify? And it's just a question. I just know every year is when the guy from Iowa or somewhere comes in and goes through all that. Is that not a required thing that we do yearly? I mean, I'm not saying we need him to come back. I just want to make sure we're not missing something that we're required to do.
It's an orientation exercise if you're talking about the work that TACE through Utah State that they do. Yeah, so we contract with them to come in and do the orientation, do some priority setting. We can continue to do that, whether we do it in November or.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that wasn't like we're not missing like something we're required to do. Yeah.
I'm glad that you like it and mention it.
Well, I just want to make sure we're not missing something required. I'll hold my opinion.
Okay, so can I get a motion that the state advisory panel for exceptional children will be attendees for the Kentucky CEC conference this year, and this meeting replace that?
Make a motion.
Yeah, second.
Ward made the motion, Cole second. Ready for the discussion?
Sorry, will we participate with the table during the exhibitors hall?
I'm gonna defer to Jared.
Oh, that's not, I don't have any idea.
That was a big discussion in July, so I hate to let that just roll on by because I think it would be helpful.
Yes, Angie says she can make sure that we will have a table. Tracy?
And I think we should have a table.
Yes.
So can we circulate a time frame that people would volunteer to man that table? I'll do a shift.
Okay, we'll have a table. We have the current motion on the floor that the state advisory panel for exceptional children will be attendees at the event for the CC conference. And we'll have a table. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Any abstention? Ayes have it. It's been moved and properly seconded that the state advisory panel for exceptional children council members will be attendees for the Kentucky CEC 18th to the 21st, and we will have a table. Now I want to say I received an email. Do we know when the tabling starts? Maybe we'll send out sign-up genius for council members to sign up.
Clarice, we could help with that if it would be helpful to the council. I'm sure I'll volunteer Misty and Jerry. I'm sure they wouldn't mind. Also work with Angie and Carrie Bearden at CC. Fix to you and then get us on that sheet if that's helpful.
Yes.
Now, will there be any information disseminated from the table or just like what will be? Okay.
Just a thought for you guys to consider. We could certainly, through our divisions, work even through our partners, because we've got a lot of partners out there that we contract with and supports that might help us get information out to parents, because, you know, there are parents, families that are different, so we could help with that. We could also support you if you see missing pieces of guidance or support that needs to be out there. We'd have to move really quickly because, you know, it's October, so we've just got a few weeks. And we have to vet everything for our communication. So if we're creating something new, we would need to do that like now, to get everything routed and approved, through our clearance procedures. But, you know, so I guess it depends on the will of the panel. I'm just sharing that to say whatever information you would like to disseminate, we can certainly help you make that happen.
Flyer, not emailed out earlier this year, that would be, that has our information on it, especially soliciting public comment. But if we could get that approved, I mean, it's something there's some, you know, they could actually think of it, you know, just a thought.
I think so that has about the public comment, does it have what we do as a council on that? Because I think if we have what we do as a council, the information for public comment, and then we could have our meeting dates for 2024. So if they do want to log in, come in person, they'll know going into the next year with those three key pieces of information.
And it may even, and I'm just throwing this out, but it may be an opportunity for them to provide written comment and submit it.
Well, when we talk about getting lost in translation, we kind of talked about that. We really wanted, a breakout session. But then some just wanted to be in attendance because we felt like we missed that piece as well. While we were having the meetings and couldn't really be an attendee.
Well, what I was thinking is as individuals are sitting at the table, there might be an opportunity for parents or the public to provide written commentary and submitted at the table. And while it won't be heard there, it can be presented at the following meeting.
Maybe a QR code could be added to the flyer?
I've got a QR code on.
So there's a
It goes
QR
directly
code.
to our page.
We
Yeah.
just tested it. It goes to the web page, and so it has meeting dates and stuff on there, and member list and all that stuff. And so I don't know if maybe we could add is there I didn't look real quick. Is there a suggestions thing on there? Right, close the page.
Yeah.
Here it is.
There is not.
I was gonna say, like, that would be a great place if we're QR, like, you could put, like,
Mhm.
click here to send public.
Submit a comment,
That could be
yeah.
an easy.
Yeah,
Go to Google form, we can read it.
okay.
And then if they did submit a comment and gave an email address, that's a great opportunity for us to reach back out and say, hey, we got your comment. We're going to be meeting, would you like to join us? And just in case you want to expand on that.
I think that's a great idea. So would that be something you guys can add back to, kind of check within, maybe within by next Friday? Is that reasonable?
Would Thursday be, or
Thursday, team?
would Thursday be better?
So my question is, what are we getting back to you about on Thursday? Because like, the only thing I thought I proposed was
The flyer
the
with the
flyer, it's
updated
done.
QR code.
The QR code's already on there.
And this is that-
The KDE page, that's what we were talking about, was the public comment thing on there. And then you would add a second QR code for, like,
Like that they can submit public comment or questions,
yeah,
like there.
yeah, the QR code goes to our KDE webpage. It tells like who we are, what we do. That's what the QR code currently goes to. So what I was suggesting, and this is way above my pay grade because it involves technology, it would be adding a button on our KDE webpage, because I'm looking at it right now, and it has all kinds of stuff. It has our names, it has our meeting dates, it has even minutes and stuff, I don't know, agendas and all that stuff. Could we add a button on there, just a link for public comment, that people, if they get to this page, could click it and submit a public comment that we heard?
Now, on the flyer, I already have an email address. For public comment. But there isn't a link on the
Webpage.
Is it on that page? Is your email, is that on there?
So you have to email it, right?
And that seems like it would just be a logical.
So has that flyer been sent to Greta for approval?
I had submitted it previously to Joe.
Okay, so it's been approved.
Well,
But I can resend it.
one of the things that I'm thinking that we want to avoid is the opportunity for public comment to get lost in the minutia of all the other things. And so what I was thinking, maybe if you could have a scan code that that had specifically public comment, and maybe on your flyer indicate public comment or something, so that you don't have to go on the website and search through all the buttons and try to pick, I think that's going to lose the momentum. I think that if a stakeholder walked up to the table and they saw your flyer and they saw a scan code that said public comment, scan here or whatever, the language would be, I think that they would be more readily able to address their issue than to have to go on the website and find another button and push that button and then.
I understand what you're saying. I'm thinking just for future reference, that would be a good place to have it.
I think so too.
I think for this purpose, if we have a lot of potential stakeholders around us at a conference of stakeholders, a special QR code that would go to whatever we're collecting, that place would be totally doable.
I think so.
Really here, scan here. Do you
Yeah.
have anything you want to say or think we need to know about?
Yeah.
And then that'll up our numbers in terms of what we one of our goals.
So yeah, if you have a thing.
So here's what I'm hearing that we want to put on the table, the flyer that needs to be approved by communications potentially. what we do as a panel, QR code, and the meeting dates. The pleasure of the council, those few items. And there is already, and Greta, there's already what we do already in flyer form, one-pager form, correct? On the website.
David, if you don't mind.
Okay. We already voted on that. Next,
East,
yes, ma'am.
Just as an introvert who's been doing this for a long time, I don't know if everyone remembers this, but the panel has in the past had some discussion about wanting to attend the conference. And in the past, there have been times that they have gone to the conference and then just set up one of the workshops as the public one. So they didn't end up losing the rest of the conference, but they still set up. So if you had a table, then you had people put through sit over having this public forum meeting Monday or Tuesday or whatever time it was. And that was one thing that they had done. So that the panel was able to do both. Even though they didn't do the work of the panel, they still offered that public forum.
We talked about, I think we keep talking about it, because I think we kind of alluded to that. So thank you for bringing that back to our attention. And even on, now that I hear you say that and I say it out loud, we could potentially ask them in a QR code to submit now and then say meet maybe in, y'all tell me if I'm wrong, maybe meet the panel, even if we set it up for an hour for public comment, but I guess we wouldn't have the forum. Is that okay?
I think to just divert them, well, I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
But I would suggest that just collect the written comment and direct them to our next meeting for anything or any responses.
How soon in advance, and I'm sure you guys are gonna tell me at least a year in advance, because we keep missing the mark when we want to say, we want to have a session, we want to have a breakout, so that we can meet our audience, our stakeholders where they are.
I think at this conference, there are some parents, but they're not a lot. So I think we have to realize the audience we're talking to. If we have a table, we're actually talking to the administrators and the teachers, and hopefully some special education teachers and gen ed teachers that would go back and give this information, give this flyer to their parents. I think maybe there are, am I right? There's not a lot of family that attends that conference. So I think we have to realize who we're speaking to, and that's just another step forward, but it's, it's not the end of the road. It's just a step forward. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
What does presenting entail? Do we have to do like a white paper or anything? Because that's the application process is usually what takes so long.
Well, we've missed the deadline to be presenters.
But wasn't that your question for next year? Is like how much time in advance? So what's the application process look like? I've never looked at it. Does anybody know if there's a white paper? That's what takes so long.
There's not a white paper. My understanding is that in order to be selected, it's basically a summary of what you plan to present. And then if that gets routed through the conference planners, go from there. It's not as formal, if you will, as a national conference where you submit a white paper and.
And typically that's due in July or August.
So I think, we could make the decision by March and get that in. Like, I don't think that's going to be all that big of a deal.
Because we talked, again, we just kind of, we're in transition. Okay, I'll make that note that we bring it up in March's meeting for 2024. Okay, while we still have a few minutes before lunch, we need to determine our 2024 meeting schedule. And typically we meet quarterly, unless we need to have a special call meeting, something around a legislation has occurred. But typically, we met quarterly at least. I do not have the bylaws in front of me for our meeting scheduled times, but those are quarterly meetings. And we can start in January. Going back to the forum, the bylaws say that we have at least 2 public forums and regular meetings to provide the opportunity for public input. We've done those at our meetings, so we have remained compliant, even with little to no participation. I'm sorry, David, did you have a comment?
If we're looking at quarterly meetings, especially looking at the first of the year, being mindful of weather, things like that, I would recommend that we, that quarterly meeting at least be sometime in March, if we can hold off that long. Unless there's a reason for a special meeting. And I'm just being mindful of weather and those traveling.
So under Article 4 in our bylaws, it states in Section 2 that we must have a minimum of 4 regular scheduled meetings. One being scheduled in conjunction with the statewide conference. We made a revision to that this year. So we at least need to get 4 scheduled meetings on the books for 2024.
I think that's a long time to go from November to March, especially if we're not having a formal meeting in November.
I agree.
So do I have any, with the exception of David just shared, do I have anybody that is willing to meet in January?
I can.
I mean, I'm just making a suggestion. I can maybe do now, but
Yeah, I can meet in January. I agree. I think we should meet sooner.
Well, I think a better question is who cannot meet in January? Can everyone meet in January?
So if we look quarterly, I'm looking January, April, July, and October. Unless we potentially again change that October meeting to a November meeting in conjunction with CEC.
Well, I like the idea of not meeting at CEC. I think that we might see how that goes and may continue that.
Yeah, especially if we are able to be presenters.
Right.
Next year. So January, April, July, and October. So it looks like everyone can meet in July.
Make it consistent, figure out first Thursday, second Thursday, whatever.
In April, currently, there's a KBE meeting on Thursday, April 4th.
I would meet the first week or two of April anyway, because it's breaks.
Yes, maybe after the legislative session's over, 15,
Yeah, that's probably.
after the 15. There's 2 more weeks, 2 more Thursday and Fridays.
For the 25th.
So we ain't got to January.
We'll be like, yeah.
I know, right? January.
Yeah, 15.
Seems fine. January the 11th. What the majority to be, 18? January 18th?
Vice chair.
I know, right?
If there would have to be a vice chair in place, there would be a meeting without you.
I'll move some things around. I'll change some flights, and I'm always down for the greater good. January 18th. Next to April, then is it after the 15th?
Yeah.
April 18th.
No, that was in January, and actually, I just looked at the updated KBE meeting dates. They're meeting April 9th and 10th, so they're.
So we could do it for 18.
She's gonna go with what we have.
April 18th.
Change the July 18th was also Thursday. I'm not also going to stick with the 18th.
I know, right? I was hoping y'all were gonna go for the 11th, they couldn't be better for me.
Or you can put it whenever in July, but I just made it like that all for you, the 18th, that is a possibility.
Say July 15th.
The July 11th. So you have to take a few birthdays.
Yeah.
That would be a precondition of the meeting.
We got you. We're gonna throw you a party. Okay, July 18th.
Thursday.
Look at that. How did we get the look? Okay.
Friday.
It took October to throw us off, right?
17th.
October 17th. Now, while we're going into 2024, I am going to put that back out there when we try to have regional meetings at is it the SAPEC or the co-ops? Which one? The SAPEC.
Can you articulate the difference between the SAPEC and the co-ops? I'm hearing it, but I'm not feeling it.
So the state is divided into essentially 8 geographical regions that are cooperative regions. The larger co-ops are member-based, and they essentially their boards of directors are local superintendent. And when I say member-based, I mean local district. The SAPECs are the technical assistance centers that are funded 100% out of IDEA discretionary funds, which comes through the OCL, and they essentially are charged with fulfilling the mission of OCL. And so when you hear the member or the SAPEC updates, the significance of that is because that's where, a large portion of if they are out boots on the ground, if you will. So they provide support to our local districts, whether it be administrators, teachers, support staff, ultimately working to improve outcomes. And they also support families.
Does the surtax receive direct direction from the KDE?
They obviously they each have different needs based on the geographical data. We meet with them once a month. We every year they submit an annual proposal, and in that proposal they outline deliverables and action steps for
Are they located within the co-ops?
Yeah, that's several years ago. There was an alignment with the co-ops and what we call then special education co-ops, which is when and how I think over the next few years, how we got the confusion between, what's a co-op versus a special ed co-op. And a couple of years ago, when we were working with them, the confusion had gotten so great because there were, large numbers of new people because of the turnover rate we've experienced the last few years. We collectively decided that we would change the name just to kind of help people see the difference. And I say that with the significance of the co-ops is that they are their fiscal agent.
Oh.
So that's when the alignment occurred, the 12, 13, 14, somewhere in that area. They AE went with the co-op to be the fiscal agent.
Okay.
So I say that because they work very closely with the other work that's going on with it.
So now that we have our meeting scheduled, do you guys want to attempt to go back out into our communities, to the surtax, and spend a day to hear more from our regional folks, our boots on the ground folks, and attempt that into 2024? Or would you like to continue to be here locally? Because if so, we want to get Misty on the calls and start preparing us, and we'll just kind of see who can accommodate the schedule at this point with the 4 surtax meetings if we want to attend that.
So the
into
surtax,
2024.
the church surtax is Central Kentucky.
So our last meeting, we were in Bowling Green.
And that would be what, Green
River. We
And
were there in
so,
April.
and so you're suggesting, when you're saying whatever you're saying right now, you're saying that we'll just rotate around different co-ops.
Mhm.
I thought the one in Wheeler was super informative.
I like that,
The
yeah.
one that's up there, I think it's what you should meet. So I would love to get every other one that's or something. I just thought it was. To remind everybody that with the vote with the hybrid meetings, ADE would not be able to support the hybrid meetings if we're off-site in the regional places. So I know that was some of the discussion that happened at that time. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that.
Thank you, Melody, for bringing that back to the forefront. If we do, just to reiterate, if we do have SAPEC meetings off-site and it's not in the Sauer building, we will not be able to provide a virtual option. We will have our interpreters on hand that can travel and make arrangements if needed, but will not have a virtual option.
Let me ask, doesn't the co-ops have virtual option? Within, I mean, although KDE is not providing the service, but the co-op can provide the service.
It's, Jeff, it's around the open meeting.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
any of that, if the technology gets, there are, we do have some surveys where the signal can be very weak. So if anybody were to drop, we would have to stop the meeting and we have to make sure that, then we have the on-site and the virtual option because if two members of the agency are gathered in the same place, and that's also considered on-site as well. So there are just some complications that come with the Open Meetings Act to accommodate. And so to really be able to say that we can, with confidence, support a full meeting that's hybrid, it would have to be here on the premises at KDE.
So any meetings at the surtax would have to be in addition to whatever happens at the KDE?
No, it will be in person without a virtual option.
In person at the SAPEC.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then I think you go back to having a hard time expecting parents to be there for any public comment.
So that's what I was going to actually say. I'm sorry, I don't remember. We probably have to go back and look at the minutes, but I do remember that decision was also made for it to be centrally located, or what was perceived to be centrally located for parent access to have a consistent location to be able to do that. But I don't exactly remember what the minutes said, but that was part of that discussion whenever that vote was taken, was being here in person for that purpose too, is what I believe I remember.
So I'm hearing that no to surtax, but I think that for formal meetings, it must be here. And that's what is that what I'm hearing?
I'm sorry, I may have added some confusion. If we are having a hybrid meeting, it has to be here because that's the only way we can support it and comply with the Open Meetings Act and make sure that the technology holds up for us. You can have a meeting at the SAPEC, it would just have to be in person only, and it would be considered in person at the SAPEC.
Okay.
What? You go, David.
What I would recommend, if we want to maybe invite those locations to join us virtually, and they can still give us an update of what they've got going on in their facilities, they can also share information.
So we'll have our Thursday updates after lunch, but if we're going to them in the community, I don't see how that would be a barrier because we're going to them. It's their community. And if their parents don't show up here.
Right, the parents are going to show up. If I live in Lexington, I'm not going to show up in Louisville. I'm not going to show up in Jamestown. I'm not going to show up. I'm going to show up virtually because I have to get my kids to school and I have to pick them up from school. So I think the idea with going to regions is prior to the ability to have meetings online. And so you were taking the meeting to the people, but now you have online capabilities and it's just become the norm. So it is much easier for a parent to jump on a Zoom and still take their kid to school and be back to pick them up and go to work versus taking a whole day arranging transportation and so forth. So I think our norm has changed, and we can accomplish it and actually make it even easier for parents by doing it virtually.
So we make that easier for them, and I still concur to say they don't show up here.
They don't know about it. That's why they don't know we exist. Parents do not go out to the KDE website and look for us and know there's a council and, oh my gosh, there's a meeting today and I'll arrange transportation and I'll get there. They don't know. There's a huge disconnect, which we've got to start filling. If I tell parents, hey, I'm on the SAPEC council, they're like, what's that?
Uh-huh.
They don't know.
Me too. And you guys, I mean, I have like shepherded bills in Kentucky's legislature. I have spoken at national organizations. I represent tens of families a year in ARC meetings and consulting work. And I didn't know about it until I was asked by another parent in the Down syndrome community who's just tapped out in his national stuff. So if I didn't know about it, I really do find it hard to believe that other people do know about it. So I agree with Tracy that but I started to say, I unmuted to say this. I switched my law practice to entirely virtual at the beginning of the pandemic. From the start of the pandemic until February of 2023, I had 5 people come in my office. 100% of my clients have kids with disabilities or loved ones with disabilities. I had 5 people come in 2.5 years, almost 3, because of what Tracy just said. They are so busy. And if we offer them the opportunity to hop on, I mean, people that are hopping on my meetings are in car line, they're at the bank, they're waiting in therapy, they've got a kid that's at speech and they're in the waiting room or in their car, in the parking lot of Cincinnati Children's or wherever. So I agree with Tracy entirely that people are going to show up if they know about us. They're going to show up online if they're going to show up at all. But I think our real efforts need to be in setting up the virtual platform for them to attend, which we can do, and then really getting the word out. And I do think that we can use the organizations that are local to do that.
Well, I think that Ashley did a great job of articulating 2 issues. One is awareness, parent awareness, and the other is convenience. However, I think that we were making an assumption that if people know about it, then they will show up virtually, and don't know about it now because they're not here virtually. So I think that we need to have a combination. I would suggest that we have a combination of both. I think some folk like to show up and let their thoughts be made known. If you're living in Fayette County and there's a meeting at Central Kentucky Education Co-op, then you can show up, and then, you know, if you wasn't able to make it because you had to wait in line for your child to get to school, you can show up at the next meeting at the Sauer building virtually.
I like that suggestion, because I think for us, the idea of being participatory in the local communities, we talked about community service projects at the schools. So we could be involved, have somebody to come from the PTO or PTA, as well as it's not just a meeting that, depending on the location and travel time, but creating a presence and creating an awareness for parents to show up. And I'm gonna support the body and what they allude to, but I don't think it's a fair assumption to say, oh, because we're having a meeting at a SAPEC, that they're going to come.
I think the other thing that I would add to that, though, that might be a counter argument is the SAPEC has a hard time getting quorum. So I think right now, if one of us goes to the bathroom, we don't have quorum. So it is a lot of us are either disabled or raising people that have disabilities or providing care for people that have disabilities. And it is really hard for us to get out of our communities. So, teachers are having trouble getting coverage. Parents are having trouble getting coverage. Our resources are low in many, many, many areas, including caregiving. So I worry that if we set things up in communities, we look like an ineffective group because we have a person or two that shows up. I think that's a real risk that we run. And then we don't get that vested authority. We don't have the opportunity to get earned authority because we aren't there. We can't be there.
Any other comments? Thank you always, council members, for this discussion. We have to have it, it's needed, and it's always appreciated for the various views that we have regarding location and meeting times. Can I get a motion on the floor to approve the 2024 meeting times and someone provide that with location? Right now I have in my notes January 18th, April 18th, July 18th, and October 17th for 2024 meeting.
That go with those dates you just mentioned here at the Cell Building for all meetings.
Have a motion on the floor for all 2024 meetings be at the South Building. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Curry. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Can I have an aye?
Aye.
All those opposed, nay? Any abstention? The ayes have it. It's been moved and properly seconded that January 20, SAPEC 2024 meetings be held on January 18th, April 18th, July 18th, and October 17th, 2024, and be held at the South Building, which will mean we will have the virtual option for attendees as well. Thank you, panel. We will now adjourn for lunch. The time is 11:50. We will return at 1 p.m. We will have our OSEP updates from Ms. Marjorie Thompson. She will join us virtually. And then our SAPEC updates will follow after that. And then any final remarks? Can I get a motion to adjourn at 11:50?
Move we adjourned 11:50.
Second, thank you. Thank you so much. The time is now 1 p.m. I'll recall this meeting back to order. Up next, we have Ms. Marjorie Thompson with OSEP.
Hi.
Joining us virtually.
Thank you for having us. I am here and I'm trying to see if I can also see, I know I can see Kim Mitchell's in the room from OSEP. She serves as our I'm the dispute resolution lead for Team A. She's the general supervision lead for Team A in terms of our dispute resolution process. And I also see that we have the Kentucky state lead on the call, Curtis.
Right.
And then I know that our associate division director is going to be joining the call as well, Dr. Al Jones, but I'm not sure if he's available yet. So
would you like to pin all those folks for you, Marjorie?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, if we have time for introductions, I would love to be introduced to who's in the room on your end.
Sure. I'll start. Good. I heard you guys are in Washington, so I still think it's morning there.
Yeah, it's 1 o'clock. It's 1 o'clock here, so I think it depends on where in Kentucky you are, right? The time
Right,
changing.
right.
Yeah.
We're on Eastern time here, so it's 1 p.m. and welcome team. I am Dr. Tanika East. I am the chairman or chairwoman today of the State Advisory Panel for Exceptional Children of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And I'll defer now to our secretary.
I'm Dana Sleeman, secretary of the panel.
David Bradley, I am the adult corrections representative.
Jenny Ward, teacher representative. Good afternoon, Brenda Hilton, State Director of Special Education and ex officio member.
Tom Curry, Executive Director with the Office of Autism.
Good afternoon, Jeffrey Coles, Executive Director of Thelma's Garden Education Academy and representing private charter schools.
That is our panel representatives, but we have several council members joining us virtually. I'll defer to Tracy first.
Hi, my name's Tracy Brewer. I'm a parent representative. I'm also the director of the Down Syndrome Association of Central Kentucky. Thank you.
Then Ashley.
Hi, I'm Ashley Barlow. I am the parent of a child with Down syndrome and a special education attorney.
That is our council, and then we have representatives from KDE also in the room and online. We turn it back over to you.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate you guys taking time. I know you have a jam-packed schedule today. The purpose of this meeting is to really get an understanding of how the state advisory panel influences Part B decisions, how they're involved, knowledge of policy and practices and things like that. I know that we did share the discussion prompts earlier, but if you would like, I can also share my screen as we're going through the discussion prompts. Make sure that's easier. Let's see. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes, Marjorie, I had to take myself off mute. Yes, we can see it.
Thank you. Thank you. And feel free, anybody can chime in as we're going through these questions or add any additional information. But our first discussion prompt is to describe how the state advisory panel, how their role is in advising the state on unmet needs for infants, toddlers, children, and youth with disabilities. And our primary focus today is obviously Part B, so from that 3 through 21 age range. Again, just to describe the role that SAP has in advising the state on unmet needs for children and youth with disabilities. If we don't have a role, then that's okay too.
Are you asking us this role or are we asking that of you? just for point of clarity.
Yeah, no, I would like just clarity from you guys on what your role is on advising the state of unmet needs for children and youth with disabilities. Like, how do you guys as a state advisory panel meet to discuss unmet needs for children with disabilities?
Oh, I am so sorry. This, and I'm looking at mine and I'm writing your notes as for the response from you. Our role, actually, we meet quarterly to discuss the challenges along with the Kentucky Department of Education, OCL, and various entities, whether that be the Office of Early Childhood, to meet those unmet needs and have discussions. Our panel advisory council is comprised of parents with children with disabilities, our stakeholders, where there be superintendents, administrators, correctional facilities.
We also receive public feedback from individuals who are expressing challenges and needs within various locations throughout the state, and we do that each time we have a meeting. We open ourselves up for public forum.
Thank you. And then how does the SAP advise the state on rules and regulations related to IDEA?
We actually have a section aligned in our agenda for our meetings where we receive those updates regarding any regulation updates or any guidance updates.
And then describe the role in the development of evaluations and reporting data. So does the SAP have a role in the development of evaluations and reporting data?
We receive that information.
And we receive the information, and we also provide feedback to the state agency as to ways that we might look at some of the elements of the data differently in the next
reporting
period.
Again, if I might not have made this clear earlier, but this information is helpful in us to see how policies and procedures infiltrate throughout the Kentucky system. Obviously, with the SAP, you have members from various arenas. So this information really is just informing us of how policies and procedures and just the way of the governance of Kentucky. So there's no wrong answers in this. It's just a matter of helping us get more information and understanding how Kentucky is set up. So the next is describe the state's process on developing and implementing policies related to the coordination of services for children with disabilities. So the state's process on developing and implementing policies related to the coordination of services for children with disabilities.
Who to defer that to implementing policy?
Is that essentially the administrative regulations? The Department of Education gets changes to the law from the General Assembly, and then they try and interpret and put that together in the regulation, and then submit that to public comment. And then, and obviously, we're allowed to see that and comment on it. That seems to me to be how that question is answered.
Yeah, we've also written letters of support to legislature, depending on what, how far they are in the process as well.
Okay. Thank you. And then for the next question, It's describe how the SAP is involved in assisting the state educational agency in achieving the full participation, coordination, and cooperation of all appropriate public agencies in the state. I will admit, I feel like sometimes it's how these questions are worded, that they are wordy, and by the time you get to the end of it, you don't even know what me, even as I'm saying it. So what we're really looking for here is how the SAP is involved in assisting the state educational agency in achieving those interagency agreements with other public agencies in the state.
We do have other agencies represented on our council. And if I could omit the full participation, because we are always seeking participation, but I don't know if full participation is as accurate in this particular sense. But when we have that information listed on our website. We have branched out into the social media realm. We continue to make our meetings public, whether that is in person here at our building or also providing that virtual option so that our public agencies can be represented as well when we talk about the collaboration and coordination of other agencies.
And as you've indicated that there's a representation of other agencies throughout the state on the SAP, and each of those representatives have an opportunity to participate in committees that influence what goes on at the state education agency.
Thank you. Yeah, I think your involvement at the SAP level then trickles into, I know, the other agencies that you work in and other committees. So that was helpful. Thank you. And then describe the SAP involvement in assisting the SEA in effective implementation of the state systematic improvement plan. So how does the SAP involvement assist the SEC in the implementation of the SSIP?
We actually have the chance year-round to provide input, but during our state CEC conference is when they provide us with the state improvement
Systemic
improvement plan to us going into the next school year. So we're able to provide our input, which is typically in November. We actually replaced that meeting this year to have that in October. But they provide us those updates and what's going to roll out months in advance.
And they give us opportunity to provide feedback and ask questions and develop new committees to address whatever deficiencies or whatever challenges the states are encountering.
That was helpful. Thank you. And then, to the extent appropriate, describe the role that SAP has in developing dispute resolution policies and procedures.
They're strictly advisory, and in terms of whenever we review outcomes, we have an opportunity at each meeting to provide feedback in the way of advising what could happen or what we could be doing in the next round of throughout the years we're receiving those challenges from the local agencies.
And the agency, KDE actually shares those dispute resolutions redacted to protect anybody's personal information ahead of time so that we can review those dispute resolutions and provide feedback when we're in person.
And
that is provided from our due process It's a sub committee. Yes.
A subcommittee, you said? Okay. Because you did say that you have the opportunity to review redacted dispute resolution, complaints that have gone through. Does the state advisory panel ever look at systematic issues? Is that something that they address during the review when you are reviewing the redacted dispute resolution complaints? Do you look at systematic issues? Is that something you dive deeper into?
I think the deep dive really happens when we look at the systemic reporting, and then we look at where the issues may be, but not with each individual redacted resolution are we addressing things systemically. I think the systemic portion comes when we review the systemic state report.
Yeah, the SSIP. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. And then we've talked a little bit about this, but and you did say that you meet quarterly. But do you meet any more frequently with the SEA?
We are to meet 4 times a year.
And we do.
And we do. We said it and we do it.
Yeah, that's important.
Yes, that is important. You can't just say it. You got to follow through. Yeah. Okay. And then describe the role of the SAP in advising the state on the general supervision system.
Can you elaborate a little bit more what you mean by that?
Yeah, the general supervision system is the comprehensive system that the SEA would be monitoring any local agencies or private schools, anything that kind of falls under their umbrella. So how there has to be certain written policies and procedures in place for the SEA to monitor those agencies.
So again,
good.
Again, that the results of that monitoring is reported yearly, and the SAP has the opportunity to respond to trends or challenges or whatever aspect of the monitoring report that it deems necessary, and the state agency receives that feedback and takes it back to address whatever policies that they would need to adjust to appropriately address whatever issues that have been surfaced.
Okay, thank you. In reviewing, sorry, Kim.
I was going to say also in general supervision, it also includes fiscal responsibilities and training, professional development, and providing TA to the local districts. It's kind of like a whole system of general supervision. If you have any responses in reference to how you're involved in personnel development throughout the state, any TA that is provided to districts, how it is brought down from the state to the local levels. If you have any experience with that, you can speak to that as well.
Well, each of those elements that you just mentioned are presented in the report, in the yearly report.
Okay.
And so when we're responding to all of the above.
Yeah.
And just curious, does the SAP provide feedback to the SEA in terms of maybe furthering technical assistance to lead agencies or other, local districts? When you're reviewing the monitoring documents, is that something that's discussed?
If it is discussed, it's discussed during the committees that address the issues that have been presented by the SEA.
Okay. And then if you could address the biggest challenges that Kentucky faces in meeting the needs of children and youth and disabilities and their families. This is a good chance for you guys to tell OSEP, what your challenges are right now, what you could, use guidance, assistance on, what trends you're really seeing in Kentucky.
As a teacher representative, I'll tell you, we would love to clone ourselves and have more of us. There's just not enough special ed teachers floating around, especially with experience. And that is really making the people who are there have to work almost twice as hard in many cases, because we have to help people who maybe have less experience or education to be able to learn how to do the job while they're actually doing the job. And that's a lot of work. I think in talking with my peers, special ed teachers across the state, most of them feel very overworked. We're being asked to put on many hats that are outside of what we're doing. I think, because we're missing teachers in many areas. So a lot of us who collaborate with other teachers, if that teacher's gone, we're taking over the whole class, which stretches us very thin. So I think the general feeling amongst my peers is that we're very overworked, we're very stressed out, and there's not enough of us. So that would be a huge problem, in my opinion.
I will say your thoughts are echoed, and we definitely hear you. We know that these are issues. If I had anything in my pockets, it would be to clone more teachers, and we know the fantastic work you do. And I do want to say, I don't have compensation or anything that I can give you, but I do hope that you know that your work really is recognized, not just by Kentucky, but by OSEP. Like, we really do appreciate that we still have people in the classroom supporting our students, because it is important. So thank you.
I appreciate that. It is appreciated. Yeah, and I almost probably could have sat here and said, guess what I'm about to say for teachers, and I'm sure you could have probably just said what I was going to say verbatim, because it's nationwide. It's not just in Kentucky, but we're experiencing the exact same problems as everywhere.
Yeah. But it doesn't make it any less of an issue for Kentucky just because it's a nationwide shortage. So you're certainly still welcome to articulate that need. I think that that's important. One thing that we have heard, and as another nationwide problem, is behavior amongst students and the increase in behavior in classrooms. So, I would be interested to know how teachers are being supported, or if that conversation is happening at the state advisory panel on how to address some behavioral issues, or how to better equip students with handling some of these issues, because maybe it's a two-part.
Yes.
I think that's an excellent point, because that would be, I have a list from the information we're gathering from peers and stuff, and that's on there. And I think it was something I was going to bring up to the chair, maybe discuss at a future meeting, mostly because I'm kind of nerdy and like to look into research. So I've been digging into trends of anecdotal stuff that people have been sending me. But again, that's another thing that's echoed every time I talk to people across the state is, I think especially there's in some classrooms, teachers and era professionals are feeling like they are on the receiving end of a lot of maybe violent behaviors, and they are not being supported, is what they feel like, by either leadership in their building or district or whatnot. And so I think that is something we should absolutely, I would love to discuss here as a state group, and see if there's anything we can, any movement we can make to make them feel more supported, because they aren't currently.
And I don't think this is a state issue, but I think one of the other things that I see local agencies encountering is limited alternative opportunities for students who demonstrate the kinds of challenges that may end in violence or physical action. I think that I'm not sure if the response to that should emanate from the state advisory panel, the state agency, or maybe the local. I'm not sure where the response should emanate. However, I think that a collaborative response is needed, because systemically it's not affecting teachers or education positively.
Well, I think go ahead.
No. I want you to respond to that.
Well, I was going to say, I think as part of the state advisory panel, and you do have this very large interagency group, these behavioral issues are not just impacting your teachers or the districts. This will impact your court systems. Like, this will go on. So I do think it is an important discussion of getting other agencies and committees involved, because the further we allow some of these things to go, the harder it is to get back on track. So, I certainly agree that having these discussions probably at multiple levels is important.
That's one of the things that I was going to say. I mean, I'm seeing in schools, almost every single one of my cases this year has some behavioral component to it. And I'm seeing a lot of trends. So one is that teachers are trying to handle things on their own when they are not equipped to do it. And I'm seeing teachers that are wanting to take a lot of data, but they don't know how to take ABC data, or don't know how to analyze data that they have, or don't know how much data they need, or how to compare data, that sort of thing. But I'm also seeing this focus on kind of like rigid implementation of behavior plans that aren't working, or behavior plans that are so new that we don't know if they're working, without any concentration on skills and strategies. So we're going to offer a picture schedule or a visual schedule, or we're going to implement timers, or we added a peer tutor, but there's no especially design instruction or instruction at all in how to interact with the peer tutor, or how to interact with the timer, what the timer is going to be doing for you, and what the expectation is, and any other lesson around any of the skills and strategies. And so, again, the skills and strategies that are being suggested are so rudimentary in every case. It's you could almost copy a BIP and just distribute it to everybody in the state and say, this is the BIP for everybody in the state. So I think there's this focus on behavior, but we aren't focusing on any proactive supports. It's all reactive supports. And that is becoming really, really problematic in the cases that I have. Another huge trend that I'm seeing, especially post-pandemic, is that students and adults alike are lacking coping skills. We don't know how to cope. I think we all experience some kind of trauma. Some experts are probably going to tell us that at some point. But I think particularly in the disability community, a lot of families were experiencing other traumas. My family, for example, my little boy has Down syndrome. He's 13 now. But at the beginning of the pandemic, we thought he had leukemia. He was at 9 different clinics within Cincinnati Children's Hospital. He's fine. It's probably some autoimmunity. But we were living with a totally different world, thinking he had leukemia, and then also trying to make all those decisions. And I think maybe for us, the decision making was the hardest. Are we going to see our grandparents and that kind of thing, which then provoked a lot of anxiety. And I'm seeing a lot of anxiety and a little bit of withdrawal and depression kind of stuff in a lot of my clients, in this complete unraveling of executive functioning and coping skills. And I think teachers don't have, what I'm always trying to tell my clients is, we need to provoke empathy. We need teachers to understand where we are coming from. They don't want to misbehave. My kid, I got a text message today. My child was aggressive at school today. And he's got a great team. So, the teacher's I feel so bad for him. We don't have teachers, I don't think we have teachers that don't empathize. I think what's happening is we have teachers that also are experiencing so much change and so many different pressures and all that kind of stuff. And somewhere in the middle, empathy is getting lost. And so we aren't able to collaborate creatively and tap into the skills that we need. So to me, it's this global thing.
Yes. Ashley, I think everything you said was 100% correct. The prescription cannot just be for the students. I think that when you have teachers or any professionals that do not have regulated nervous systems themselves, they cannot then teach a child to regulate their nervous system. And you're 100% correct that during COVID, all of us did experience trauma. And I think that your point about the decision, special ed parents already experience decision fatigue because of the constant questioning that COVID, I think, kind of gave the rest of us what that felt like. If I leave the house for my mental health, will it impact my physical health? And I think that was the constant pull that a lot of people did experience. But you couple that with an already fatigued decision-making capacity system, and it makes it exponentially harder. So I do agree that being proactive and providing supports and training opportunities and learning opportunities for teachers to practice that empathy or to practice regulating their nervous system, allowing time for pause, I think would probably help all of us a lot more than we think, of not continuously pushing to find a solution immediately, but allowing time for pause and reflection in the classrooms with teachers and students would probably also be very helpful. And I know that that's difficult given the demands that are constantly being placed on teachers and the education system. So what you said was very
kind
important.
of like couples with what people that are in classrooms said just a minute ago. Like the aggressive behavior is dangerous, and I mean, we have to be very, very, very careful in 2023 with behavior in schools, necessarily so, which is, you know, a fact that we have to face. And so, you know, I think teachers probably, if I try to like look at their interests, don't feel as supported because, yeah, like let's be really empathetic and sit next to this person and co-regulate and give some joint attention and that sort of thing. But what am I going to do with the other 11 children in my classroom while I'm doing that? And I have this obligation because, you know, my district just made me start to take data on everything that happens. And you know, so like, I realize that they've got this paperwork rigmarole that they have to go through, which then doesn't allow them to just care and teach. And so much behavior is so commonsensical. But I mean, I definitely see coping skills and other skills and strategies that are just not being taught and students not being able to access them. And then they do things that are really extreme. So I think we need more coping skills in schools.
Yes, for everybody.
That's my thing. We need more coping skills and we need to call it something. And unfortunately, this is another good point. And I'll slide in here. OSEP, you guys are doing such a great job at these outreach things. So I'm so great. Like I'm seeing you everywhere and I love it. I'm so grateful for that. But it's also super unfortunate. I know teachers feel this. I talked to a group of teachers in Florida not too long ago that was like, everybody wants to fight. Like we could say to every parent of every child with autism, we're going to give you outplacement, and every child with Down syndrome, we're going to give you inclusion, and people would still fight. They just want to fight. And I think it's so sad how politics is coming into this, because if I say we need coping skills at schools, I can't call it social emotional learning because then the whole community is going to show up and get really upset. And so I think, you know, having to kind of dance around words and that kind of stuff is exhausting. I'm an attorney. I do that kind of all day long, but teachers are having to do that, which is also exhausting for them and different and new. And they do need support. They need people to say that out loud, right? I can say it out loud because I work for myself. And if people don't like me saying it, then they don't hire me. But, you know, in a school, that's a different situation.
Yeah. I also think that your point about the trauma and managing students' behavioral issues in the classroom, given all of the school shootings that we've experienced over the last 2 decades, I think that that plays very real in teachers' minds when they're going through this is, am I doing the best thing for this student and all my other students and myself? So I think that trauma coupled with everything else is a very real issue. So everything that you said was very, helpful. And I'm happy to have these conversations because I do think they're important.
I wanted to say one more thing, and I think it was, and this is probably again another nationwide problem. But I taught at a local college here, and I was teaching emergency certified teachers, only teachers essentially. And we have, I think, 9 pathways as Kentucky responded to the teacher shortage and kind of loosening and adding additional pathways for teachers to become teachers. And I want to say there's 9 or 10 now. I don't know. There's the traditional way, and there's about 8 or 9 other ways you can become a teacher now. And so when I was working with these teachers who were teaching, but taking some of their very first education courses, they were actually in the classroom as special education teachers, and bless their hearts, the messages that we get were almost heartbreaking. Because again, they're they're flying the plane while they're building it. And so, I wonder if a lot of, and I'm sorry, I can't read names, it's really far away, what you were talking about, a lot of your friend that was talking earlier. I don't think it's that, I heard that maybe they don't care or it's a lack of empathy. I just think that God bless, they're drowning and doing their absolute best with what they know how. And they don't, you don't know what you don't know, but, I would get papers breaking confidentiality and stuff that's very, very basic that most traditionally trained teachers know. And I just thought, oh my goodness, these people are already doing this. And like, holy cow.
Yeah.
And so, I think you don't know what you don't know and they're doing the best they can, but that doesn't mean we're getting the job done. I guess, if that makes any sense. And I think that accounts for a large, at least a decent part of our problem, because I'm not sure how many alternate certification teachers we have, but I'd say probably around 50% of our teachers, at least, special education teachers would be my guess.
I think we're all always doing the best we can, right? And I like to hope that, that is the case and that's how people operate. And I do feel like that is how people operate. And I think that it is important to note that, we absolutely recognize that teachers have empathy and are going into, nobody's teaching for any other reason than wanting to be the best for these kiddos. And we absolutely recognize that. And recognizing the constraints that teachers have is important, of the demands that they have and how it all compiles together, I think is the bigger issue. So thank you for sharing that. It's important to note. Well, let's end this on a positive note and tell me about all the accomplishments in Kentucky that you are doing to meet the needs of your children and youth with disabilities. This is where you get to brag on programs that you have in your state or things that are working really well. And we know that there are things that are working really well. So if you have a system or anything that you feel.
We've learned a lot about our regional surtax that are really knocking it out of the park.
And I think that we're made abreast of programs that are currently being implemented and beginning, particularly as it pertains to the preschool, the learning bus, the quality instruction training, and the pyramid state leadership training having to do with social emotional competencies or coping skills, as some folk want to articulate it. And then the guidance updates that have been developed, the summative assessment parent guide, child find guide, as well as all the transition guidance. All of these things are up and coming and recently developed. And our expectation is that they will positively impact the state.
And I think too, we have been in a transitional period for the Commonwealth as a whole, and then as a panel as well. And I think we're learning each other. We're becoming more adaptive to meet the needs of those that we serve, including the children, those with disabilities, the parents, the educators, the administrators, because we have transitioned commissioners. We have transitioned me as the chair here. This is only my second month in my seat, and I'm still new to the Commonwealth. I learn so much every day from my colleagues and constituents throughout my community. But that's a really big accomplishment for us. And as a panel, we're learning to still pivot through COVID and still try to provide meeting spaces, not only safe spaces for them to come, but also brave spaces. Because when we talk about, we move with intentionality when we talk about those that we're serving, whether it's those in the classroom or because we're a loved one. But it's been very transitional for us here in the Commonwealth. And I think that's a big accomplishment for us to continue to make gains throughout this transitional period.
I like what you said about creating safe spaces, but also brave spaces. I think that's important. And I think that the way that you had people share today was a good example of that, of being able to create a safe and a brave space, because you gotta have both. So, and being intentional. I think that that's key. I think we often get on autopilot and move throughout the motions and know we have to check boxes, but again, that taking time to pause and being intentional about the work that we're doing can really shift something from being good to great. So I really appreciate those sentiments and how you're pushing Kentucky forward. I like to hear that.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have anything else to add? Anybody from OSEP wanna?
I just want to ask a question, panel on, going back to the annual report that's provided for your review. You mentioned that it spans across a lot of data. You have a lot of data from monitoring to TA to training, professional development. When you're able to provide feedback to the state, you can give me, it doesn't have to be like an exact example. What's an example of how you provided feedback and that led to maybe a revised policy that led to an outcome? Have you been able to provide feedback and actually see an outcome come back from your feedback or your review of that annual report?
One thing that comes to mind, and I may not be able to give the full data set, but we talked about disproportionality of our teachers with students of color and behavior in the classroom and how that was reported. And we went back and asked at one particular meeting, hey, can you provide us that data set when we're talking about the disproportionality of the data sets? And we did get that. Our questions were answered regarding, we didn't make the change, but I think it provided us with clarity with the questions that we were asking.
I can give a specific example. Sometimes my bosses like to watch, so hi to them if they're on. But we had a conversation on our very first meetings about the parent survey and how that we're required to send out every year to all parents for participation, and how we wanted to increase those numbers. And I think I out loud said something like, I've never seen this before. Like, how does this get sent out? And my bosses who were watching had a small panic attack because they're like, you're supposed to be sending that out every year. And I was like, oh, this is surprising news to me. And so they've actually very much regulated that system in my districts. They did not realize there was a problem until we talked about it out loud. And so I think that was one thing that immediately got fixed. And so hopefully our numbers are much better, at least for my district this year or anyway.
That's a great example. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all I have, Marjorie. Curtis, anything, Al?
Yield to Al. Okay.
No, I don't have anything. Al Jones, Associate Division Director here at OSEP. I do want to say thank you for sharing and providing your comments today. It's been very helpful and it's extremely valuable to us as the monitoring team.
All right. Well, thank you all, and we won't keep you any longer. We appreciate you allowing us to sit in for your visit and we didn't have to reconvene with everybody. So thank you. And we will we are looking forward to our monitoring trip to Kentucky in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you to both team and Marjorie.
Bye.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Next on the agenda, we will transition to the SAPEC team with Dion Bates. I believe, Dion, you are joining us virtually as well. I know we're a little bit ahead of time. Are you prepared for us, or do you need a small break to transition?
No, I'm fine. I'm ready whenever you are.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. The floor is yours to provide us with the SAPEC update.
Okay, great. Would it be appropriate for me to share my screen?
Absolutely. We can grant you those privileges.
Okay, thank you. So I'm here with you today. I'm with Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative, and I'll go ahead and advance to the next slide. And this slide is just a representation of the cooperative regions across Kentucky. So you see that I'm located in the very southeastern part of the state. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. So the cooperative that I work in is Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative, and so you can see our region. And so we are the Special Education Regional Technical Assistance Center. So we do provide technical assistance and direct support to teachers, directors of special education professionals in the district, and we are an extension of the Office of Special Ed and Early Learning. So we do try to disseminate and share information directly from our office. The last couple of years, we've transitioned as part of that work as a SARETAC into using that organizational structure with the North Star priorities. And as we've moved to that work, we've used a much more data-driven decision-making process. So we do always consider the annual performance report and the state performance plan as we plan and determine the delivery of services that we're going to provide to our schools and districts. And then we always continue to check to see if we have an impact along the way. And part of that is our data that we collect in terms of impact that we have across our regions. So those are some things that we're working on. And I think we're doing a much better job in terms of the data-driven decision making. We have state task groups, and they're divided by content or specialty area. And within those task groups, we really look at the needs both of the state, the region, and then we also consider our district needs assessments. And that's how we plan to how we're going to provide both professional learning, coaching, and then follow-up support. But those are the primary areas: our math, literacy, behavior. We do due process, low incidence, assistive technology, and transition. And again, those all come, and we use guidance from the Office of Special Ed and Early Learning as part of that work that drives that those tasks within those groups. And in the fall, we began our new school year. We had a kickoff event, and we always revisit and talk about the scope of work. And again, we make sure that those priorities at the state at each cooperative are aligned with state work, and we meet monthly. And another thing is that we have members of our council, of our state task groups that provide PD during the CEC or the Council for Exceptional Children presentations. So that's another contribution that we make statewide to help with professional learning for all of our special education professionals. We support our districts as well with the comprehensive coordinated early intervening services. And these are just a few bulleted ideas of things that we extend that. We partner with the Kentucky Department of Education, the Office of ABRE, the Human Development Institute, and we help our districts with they're looking at disproportionate representation. And so we help them to look at records, the due process records. We also help them with the stakeholder engagement. We do some root cause with those districts, and then we've worked with OCIL and around accessing and improving special ed with the West Ed. And so that's given us some tools and resources so that we can continue to support our districts. So that's a big part of the work, is just providing that technical assistance and that direct support as we can in terms of professional learning, particularly around eligibility or child find practices. So those have been a big part of our work as well. And then we have 7 of the 9 cooperatives that are engaged in the transformation zone work. And so we've looked at multiple ways to engage districts in that transformation zone, and that comes then back directly related to our state performance. Our state performance plan, and how we can connect. We're looking at the area of mathematics. So we have math consultants and teams at each of our cooperatives that are supporting our districts with transformational change using the science of implementation. And so that's another piece, a big piece of our work, is to really help with that transformation and using that science in order to make improvements within the schools and addressing areas of mathematics and behavior. So those are some things particularly with that. And then we also received funding through, we had requests for funding, and we were funded to do transition through ARP money. And so we were funded those, and there's some really great things that are happening all across the state in terms of how are we supporting transition. So we have things like workshops and conferences that are occurring now in order to bridge that gap for learning loss and opportunities for our students with disabilities. We have some programming that's occurring. In our region particularly, we're working on teacher professional development and how are we going to sustain that work in transition and do a better job with transition even after the opportunity for those grants have diminished. And so we're really thinking about sustainability. How can we be actionable and impact post-secondary transition? And then, of course, we're doing, again, some events that connect students to some missed opportunities through those funds. And then this last slide is a link. It has our email and link and the name of the cooperative director, the SAPEC director, and their email for you to share and to use. And each of us in any of those regional SAPECs are happy to help and support schools and districts, ask and answer questions. And we do extend our work to support students. We have things that we do to help support districts with parents. So we are trying to be very inclusive with our technical assistance and provide as much support as to our districts as they need. So that's kind of the big rocks or the pieces of work that we're doing as the state SAPEC group. And I can pause right there for any questions or.
I do have one quick question. You mentioned the kickoff event that took place in August.
Yes.
Is that annual? And if so, is there a way for SAPEC to be involved in that meeting or at least attend so that we can talk with your administrators and teachers about what we do as a council?
Mm-hmm. So the kickoff event I was referencing was it was the State Cooperative Network or the SAPEC group. And so we meet, so that actually, I think we had initially started that annual event prior to COVID. And then after COVID, we didn't have that event. So this was the first year we really brought everyone together. But there's always a window or of opportunity that we could invite that first day for teams or groups to meet the SAPEC group, both the SAPEC directors and the consultants across the state. So that could absolutely happen if you would like to be part of that.
Yes.
Again, we just revisited that and felt like the need, it helped us in terms of a statewide network to really make sure that we were addressing the needs of both the state, region, and then district level through our planning for state professional development and those kinds of things. So. But absolutely, the answer, we can do that, yes.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions online? Are there any more questions in person? Dion, thank you for that overview. Has that PowerPoint been shared with us so we can disseminate that information out to the council for contact information as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope that we can get out and eventually visit some of the SAPECs, and we hope to join you in person soon.
Absolutely. Thank you. We certainly invite you anytime you'd like to visit. And we are in the very southeastern part of the state, but we would always love to have you visit. But
Thank you for
Thank you for
that.
the opportunity.
All right, team. We are a little bit ahead of schedule. So now at this time, any final remarks? And then want to make the exit slip reminder that if you have any travel vouchers that need to be submitted, if you could email that to Ms. Angie Gould, she would appreciate that. If you had any lodging as well, please turn that into her. I do have a question for Dr. Ward. You mentioned a topic that you would like to bring back up. Can you give me that again so that I can write that down, make sure Misty gets that for our agenda going forward?
Happily, but can we do that in an email later?
Oh, okay.
Because
Yes,
we
yes.
I actually want to put that down.
Okay, yes.
I think I got something really quick that I didn't have.
Yes, if you could send that out and then Misty will make sure that that gets on the agenda for us next. Any closing remarks from online with Tracy or Ashley? I know Ashley, oh no, Jenny has to, Dr. Ward has to get the kids, so trying to be mindful, but Ashley or Tracy, thank both of you all for joining us today. I see a thumbs up.
Thank
We
you.
always appreciate your commentary, whether it's in person or virtually. We do appreciate your continued participation. From the floor, any final remarks?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
And that second.
I have a motion to adjourn the meeting at 1:57 p.m. Again, thank you for joining us today.